Welcome to Love Thy Lawyer, where we talk with attorneys about their lives and careers. I'm your host, Louis Goodman. Today, we welcome Ted DeBettencourt to the program. Mr. DeBettencourt earned both a JD and MBA, and seemingly has made good use of both disciplines. He is the founder of Juvo Leads, a chat services company that uses real people to communicate with clients via web-based chat. He is an expert in legal marketing and the effective use of technology in developing client leads. Originally from Martha's Vineyard, he now lives in rural North Carolina, farming and raising 4 daughters. We'll have a lot to talk about. Ted DeBettencourt, welcome to Love Thy Lawyer.
Louis, thanks for having me on. It's a pleasure to be here and an honor to be a guest of your show here. So thanks for having me on.
It's a pleasure to meet you. I've been a customer of yours for a long time before I ever even thought about having you on the podcast. So it's a real pleasure to meet you in person.
Likewise.
Can you explain what your business is in your words, how you understand your business?
Sure. We're a human-powered chat and message answering service. So how our business operates is we go on a law firm website, we pop up, have a conversation with those visitors, and convert those conversations into qualified leads. And why we exist as a business is because what our clients find and what we do from a lot of A/B testing is that when you put our service on your website, we're going to get you at least 50% more leads. And we're so sure of that number that we give every client that works with us a free 30-day trial so we can prove the data with the data that they're getting a lot more cases that they wouldn't have gotten otherwise strictly because of our chat service.
How long have you been in this business?
We started at legal marketing probably since about 2010 and chat specifically since about 2016.
I want to come back to your business, but first I want to know a little bit about you. Were you a vineyarder?
I was a vineyarder, yeah. And our rivals in sports were the Nantucket Whalers. And we beat them my junior and senior year. Nothing but pride there. So we have a lot of vineyard pride. I grew up there. My father was born there. My grandfather was born there. And his family came over in the whaling ships. If you ever heard of the book Moby Dick, all the sailors in that book are from an island. A bunch of them are from islands in the middle Atlantic called San Miguel. They're from the Azores. It's an archipelago, a little bit off Africa. The middle of the Atlantic, kind of the Hawaii of the Pacific, but not as warm or beautiful. But it is pretty beautiful over there. But my family's from there. They came to the vineyard, and I grew up there. And one of my daughters was born there. The rest were born in Boston, and we immigrated to North Carolina about 4.5 years ago now.
When you beat Nantucket, what sport was that in? Was it in harpooning or something else?
Not harpooning. We don't even have at the time, we didn't have a swim team, but recently they came out with one. The big sport in the vineyard, for at least when I grew up, was football for sure.
So after you graduated from the Vineyard High School, where did you go to college?
I stayed in Ireland and I went to Rhode Island. So I went to Providence College in Rhode Island, then lived in DC for a year, and then went to law school in Cleveland, Ohio, which is not an island, or it's on a lake, but it's not the same. So I lived in Cleveland, and after my first year of law school, I'm like, kind of these law and business classes are a little bit more interesting than the legal classes. So I saw they had a program where I could do my MBA in 2 years. So I got out of Case Western with 3 years total, but I had a both JD and MBA, and I really liked the business side more. So I just stayed in business from that, graduating there.
You took a year off between college and law school?
Yeah.
What did you do during that interim year?
I worked at a VC fund I did a few jobs, but the two main ones were I was at a VC fund doing IP research because the patent and trademark office was there. And then I worked at a big sales company doing sales for an organization. Just getting my footing, doing the LSAT, getting ready for law school. I tried studying for the LSAT during college, but I'm like, senior year, I was having too much fun to fully dive in there.
When did you first start thinking about being a lawyer? And then when did you actually first really decide, okay, I'm going to apply and fill out all the forms and send in the money and really apply?
In college, I was on the debate team in undergrad, and I loved it. It was fun, different debates versus different teams, and I got pretty good at it. So I really loved it. It was a rush standing in front of a crowd, debating with people. winning. And if you won, you get up and there'd be more and more people you'd stand in front of and give your arguments for. And I just had a passion for it. I said, this is awesome. And so I'm like, all right, what's next steps for this? How do I keep this going? And that naturally led to the closest thing I found was law. I applied to law school, got into there. And then I quickly found out, for at least my understanding from law school, was that it's a lot more writing, a little bit less glorious law and order, a little bit more writing and tedious work that I wasn't really looking forward to. So I pivoted my career at that point.
What was it about the MBA thing that attracted you once you realized that you could get an MBA and a JD at the same time?
I tried a few business courses first and I loved them. So I just found myself really gravitating in the business school courses and really loving it. So I said, all right, maybe this is more my passion. So let's follow the passion so I can really excel in my career.
Once you graduated, you had a JD, you had an MBA. Where did your career path take you? And I'm wondering if you could briefly bring us up to date, like from the time you graduated, what sort of business and legal jobs that you had, and bring us up to where you are with Juvo leads.
Sure. It's really a tale of mostly floundering and finding your footing through there. I know a lot of people I talked to. I worked at Goldman Sachs, all these elite institutions doing things like that. I did not. So I got out of my JDA, my accelerated JD MBA program. I love telling myself that. I just graduated from Case Western with an accelerated JD MBA. I had a really big head on my shoulders. So then when I went to apply for jobs and kind of looking for jobs, I was, at the time, this was 2009, I was applying to the jobs that were $200,000 a year and up. And surprise, they weren't calling me back. So then I went down to the 150, the 100, and I couldn't get any callbacks. So I was like, all right, maybe this degree isn't as big as I thought it was. So I quickly couldn't get my feet under me. It took me a little while to find my footing. I found myself eventually at a content marketing company that was doing, not firm, agency rather. And they were writing content for a lot of businesses. It took me about 3 or 4 years. I tried a few jobs in the meantime, just bouncing around. But then I got into this marketing job, which was a good opportunity. I was there for about 3 or 4 months. So they were writing content for a lot of law firm websites. So I had the law background, so they put me in the law department. So what I found is that it was basically just a content mill, writing content for firms, but they weren't doing the other side of the business. If you have content, you still got to push it on the website and then do the SEO, do the PPC, do all that stuff. So I was there about 3 or 4 months, and all the clients were saying the same thing. What do I do with this content? Like, how is this helping me? And they weren't doing any of the SEO or the PPC or that side. So I was kind of like, we're doing half the battle here, but then you got to do all the rest. So then I was like, why don't we try to develop this in the company? And it was a big company. It was owned by they were a $10 million company. They were owned by a $100 million company, which not huge, but big. And they had no desire to do that. So on the side, I started working with a few firms to learn how to do the SEO. So my first few companies, I was just figuring it out on the fly, reading reports, understanding how to do SEO. So I taught myself how to do SEO for some firms. I realized there was a market for SEO for law firms. So I had a few clients in Boston, and all of a sudden I realized if you do the SEO, then you have to learn how to build a website. So I had to learn how to build websites. So within the next few years, I took on a few clients, was learning to do the SEO. And then I had a little agency for myself. At my peak, I probably had about 15, 20 law firms I was working with and a few other non-law firms doing the content, the SEO, the PPC, all the things that would help them make better use of that content. So that existed. So that started in about 2011, 2012. And then in about 2016 or so, all my law firm clients started getting hit up by chat companies, like the ones that are probably reaching out to you now saying, hey, we want to do your chat. So I took their bait. I tried a few of them for my clients and it worked great. My clients were getting more leads for chat. I started answering chats myself for my firms. And when I started doing that, because I was tracking all the calls, the forms, the chats, I was tracking for the firms, I saw my leads went up about 50%. So it turns out when you do things the right way, when you answer chats fast, when you answer chats well, when you only send them leads that they want, and you don't try to block their phone bar or take up half their website with chat, you get your firms a lot more leads. So what started as me answering chats for my 10, 15 firms in Boston has now turned into us answering chats for about 1,100 firms around the country. And I'm proud to say I'm no longer a chat agent. Just the operations guy behind the scenes.
How many chat agents do you have working for you now?
A little under 100.
And just to be clear, in case anybody, doesn't know, the chat is that thing that pops up on a website and asks you if you want to chat. And most of these, as I understand it, and certainly my experience with them has been dealing with some kind of a bot, some sort of software that mimics a human being typing. But Juvo leads, there really are people who are answering these chats and doing the chats. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Our motto is actually, and I say this as much as I can, our motto is butts, not bots. That's butts in the seat, not bots in the cloud, real people answering chats. Because what we find is when there's a lot of companies that use robots out there or say they're using robots, but it's like a scripted A/B response. And what we find is that by having humans, we can convert a lot more leads into more conversations into leads. Because at the end of the day, we're working with law firms. Law firm leads are worth a lot. So if we can squeeze an extra 50, 60, 70% of conversions out of your traffic, it's worth it. And what we find is that a lot of times when people are looking for a lawyer, they're not just sitting on the web, going to the website and saying, hi, I want a consultation. They're saying, hi, I have this problem. Here's something bad that's happened to me, a loved one, or a situation I'm in. Is this something you can help us with? So 62% of our chats start with a conversation. So what we do first is we empathize with what they're going through, build trust with them by reassuring them that they're in the right place. If you're a personal injury matter, you're going to know that a personal injury matter can help you. If you're a criminal lawyer, you want to know that you can help criminal people that have been charged with a crime. So we want to build trust, empathize with them, then have that conversation with them to qualify them into a lead. So it's really about having the empathetic conversation, show compassion for what they're going through, reassure them they're in the right place, then qualify them based on the rules that the firm gives us.
And then once that person who is called in has gotten to talk to one of the chat people and has given them the information, how long does it take for the chat person to send a text or an email over to the person at the firm who is going to be getting back to them and being able to talk to them specifically about their issue?
Great question. About 20, 25 seconds. So once we save it, so let's say we make it through the full conversation, then we save the lead. The law firm is going to get contacted from us in any one of 7 ways. We're going to email them the lead, text them the lead if they want. We're going to call them to say, hey, you got a new chatter, press 1. They press 1, they're talking to that chatter. We're going to add it to your CRM, comes to our dashboard. For a lot of our clients, we're even sign retainers right through chat. So boom, you have a good case. Yeah, we'll sign you up. We'll literally do this document signing with them through chat. And then finally, we can even book consultations on law firms' calendars.
You have talked a lot about growing businesses and scaling. Can you explain how that works?
Sure. For ourselves or for our law firms?
Let's talk about doing it for law firms first, and then let's talk a little bit about how you worked your business and scaled your business.
Sure. So for law firms, it really depends on what stage you're at. So when you're a smaller firm, maybe you're a solo starting out and you're answering your own phone calls. And what you're going to find pretty quickly is calls come in all hours of the day when you're doing 12 different things at once and you don't have enough time to follow up with those leads. So the first step, the first thing to growing a law firm is when you're at that stage where you have enough business and you want to keep growing. The most important hire you ever make is the first person that's going to answer the phone that's not you. Once you have that person in place, then you got to measure that and manage their success. Because even when you have a few people in place, the big difference between firms that we see that grow and the ones that don't are the ones that don't measure their intake. What a lot of firms find is if you listen to your phone calls from your intake team, you might not like what you hear. So getting that part of your business managed and measured properly is one of the key successors for growth. And that's true for whether you're a firm with answering yourself, and you probably know how those calls are going, or you're a firm with 20 intake personnel answering them all around the clock. It's the firms that measure their intake and know their wanted lead to signed rate, that know their lead to wanted lead rate, and know their website traffic to total leads rate. Those firms that measure that and manage that process are the ones that we see grow.
Let's talk a little bit about legal marketing and kind of the evolving landscape for marketing legal services. You've said that it involves a mix of SEO and pay-per-click, PPC, some other strategies. I'm wondering if you could address those issues for the people who listen to this podcast who are primarily lawyers.
Yeah. It's going to really depend on your tolerance for timeliness. So SEO, no matter who you go to, if you ever get a promise that, you can get your first page in a month, they're either lying or they're going to get your first page for something that's unrelated to the cases you want. So SEO takes a lot of time to build up. And if you do it, hope that it takes 9 to 12 months, but it can take longer depending on your market. So then if you want leads today, it's a pay-per-play world. So the first place you always start is Google with their pay-per-click leads and Bing's pay-per-click leads. After that, you want to move into the LSAs. That's local service ads. So that's a new ad type in Google. After that, then you move into the less direct response. So that would be the billboards, the radio ads, the TV slots, the OTC, all the other types. That's more brand awareness. So there's a lot of big plays in the brand awareness. That's usually for firms that have already not conquered, but have the well-established foothold in the SEO side, in the pay-per-click side, in the LSA side as the way to take it to the next level.
I am in Northern California, and I'm not sure how things are in North Carolina, but here in Northern California, in the personal injury world, which I am not in, I see, 4 or 5 firms that are doing an incredible amount of billboard advertising on the sides of buses, advertising at sports arenas. And I know that this advertising is insanely expensive. And I'm just wondering if you can tell me how that works and how these firms can afford to do this level of advertising.
Sure. They first, I don't want to say mastered, but they know their costs per case from organic traffic, from direct traffic, from PPC, LSA, Google Ads. Once you have a ballpark of that, there's no direct way to track. You can try by putting like a phone number, text this number to this billboard, but it's not perfect data. So when you're doing marketing and judging your marketing based on performance, you kind of got to look at 2 things. One, the long tail, the long run for it. And you can't judge every billboard or every activity in its own sake. Because what happens, and this is called an attribution issue. So a client will see, touch, know your law firm generally about 8 times before they reach out to become a lead, whether they chat with you, text with you, call you, or fill out a form. So there's going to be 8 touch points. How do you attribute that billboard if it's one touch point of 8 before they raise their hand and say, hey, I have a case? So it's really hard to do. So what most firms do is they judge it in either a quarterly or a yearly basis. So let's say you're spending $1 million a year and you're spending it on billboards, on TV ads. It's hard to judge the difference between the billboard and the TV. It's all going to reflect in your direct traffic. So when you see your direct traffic and your branded traffic, your leads from that increase, you can't attribute it to the billboard in 495 or 95 North. You can't attribute, you don't know what it's from, but you just know that your overall direct traffic and overall leads are up. So you got to take the long view when you do more indirect sources that are more about brand recognition than you do from like pay-per-click. So, with pay-per-click, you spend $10,000 and you know exactly how many leads you get, how many cases signed from it. That's a lot easier, but for those higher in the funnel touch points, it's a lot harder.
I'd like you to talk a little bit about your own experience as a business person, opening a business, developing a business, growing a business. How has that worked out for you, for Ted?
It's been great. I don't have a boss, which is good. Or aside from my wife, I tell my kids, when you have clients, you don't have a boss, but all my clients are a boss to an extent. So it's a little different than traditional 9 to 5 in the sense that you run your own ship. I have a partner. I'm a 50-50 co-founder. So he and I bounce ideas off each other all day, every day. There are definitely advantages to having your own business, but there are certainly as many disadvantages. I get emails at midnight from clients with all manner of issues that can prop up. And since we're a 24/7 business, when a chat comes in that wasn't handled or they thought we should have been done something differently, or I don't know why, there's a million things that can happen when you're 24/7 business, and we're always answering chats. So we got to answer those messages then. So I'm often up late at night answering text messages, phone calls, emails from clients. So that's probably the disadvantage. The advantage is that we're growing the business. So when we first started, it was literally just me answering chats for about 10 firms in Boston. And now we're a little over about 1,100 clients around the country, and revenue's been good too. So we've grown at least 100% in the past 3 years.
Wow.
So each year we've been growing at a healthy rate, and that's been fun for sure.
I'm going to shift gears here a little bit and ask you, what do you think's the best advice you've ever received? And then let me turn it around a little bit and ask you what advice you would give to a young person just starting out in a career or a business. And you could answer either one or both or any way you want.
I don't even know if it was advice I received, but don't give up, don't give up, don't give up, don't give up. A few times when we first started, I was answering chats. I was probably chat agent number one until we had enough clients to justify hiring somebody. And chats come in 24/7, 365. So when a chat comes in at 2 a.m. and I'm waking up to answer those chats, it wasn't fun. And I wanted to give up and said, hey, this business isn't working. I'm tired of this. Let's not do this. But we didn't. We just kept doing it. And we hired a few people and hired a few more. But the don't give up, don't give up, don't give up would probably be the best advice that I've gotten in that way. To a young person starting their own firm or starting their own business, don't give up, don't give up, don't give up, but work harder than you think you've ever worked before, and then work even harder. The competition is, and if you think there's any shortcuts in life, there's not. Work harder than everybody else, and that will give you the best chance to succeed.
What has your family life been like, and how has the career fit into your family life, your family fit into the career? I know your girls are very important to you, and I'm wondering if you could just comment a little bit about your family situation.
Sure. I have 4 girls, 6, 4, 3, and 1. My oldest is 6, so I don't have all that much experience with the family life side, but I work from home. I'm in my office that's near the home. They come and visit me all the time, probably more than they should. I open up popsicles, wrestle them with them, have lunch with them. So I've been blessed in that way that I can spend time with them throughout the day. I'm a dad first, a businessman second. My wife and my kids will tell me that first. A lot of the people that we know, like they have jobs that take them away from their family a lot of the time. I've been blessed that I'm home most of the time. I do go to conferences fairly often, and those are 3 days here, 2 days there, away. But for the most part, I get to spend a lot of time with my kids, and having a business that I can do that with has been really great for the family life.
You moved to rural North Carolina, and I'm wondering if you could tell us a little bit about what prompted that and a little bit about what your setup there is.
Sure. A lot of it was financial. I was doing the agency side. I was transitioning to Juvo leads, not putting a lot of time into agency growth. And I'll be honest, the first 3 or 4 years of Juvo leads, like we didn't know what we were doing. We knew how to answer chats, but we didn't know how to grow the business. The agency side, I got all my clients from word of mouth, referrals. So as I'm sure with chat, because I'm guessing a lot of chat companies have reached out to you, they were very aggressive on sales. So I didn't understand really how to do that. So it took us 4 years to get any traction. And we didn't know what we were doing because we knew we had to answer chats, but we didn't know how to grow the business. So there was a 3 or 4 year period there where the agency was pretty much done. I had a few clients that were hanging around, but there were new clients coming in. The Juvo leads was growing ever so slowly. And then my wife was working full time. I was living in Boston. We actually had a funny living situation. So we'd moved all around Boston. We were living in a town called Canton in the suburbs. And my wife, we had 1 kid, and that cost $2,000 a month for childcare. We got pregnant with a kid number 2. That was another $2,000 a month we were going to have to spend. We were spending about $3,500 a month on a not great apartment. And the apartment was funny. It was right next to the train tracks, or the commuter rail rather. And when we got showed the house, it was like a duplex, a split house, up and down split. We were on the left side next to the train tracks. And when the train would come by, it wasn't very loud because it just goes 30 miles an hour. But then the bullet train would come by. And we didn't see the house when the bullet train came by. But then the first time the bullet train came by, it was so loud it shook the house. And we thought we were getting attacked. We thought it was getting bombed. So like the first time it came by, like we ducked and we thought, oh, we're under attack. I don't know what from, but it was outrageously loud. And that was for $3,500 a month in Boston. And we just looked at the numbers one day. I remember being on the commuter rail back to work. I was working at a work bar at the time, like a co-working space. And I just remember calculating the numbers like, these numbers aren't adding up. Like, how are we going to buy a house in Boston? How are we going to afford 2 kids of that? My wife was pregnant. She was going to take more time off of work. We're like, all right, how's this all working out? And the numbers weren't adding up. So then we said, all right, what are their other options? Like, we either rent or grow the business really quick. And we were trying, but we weren't there yet. So one of our coworkers suggested North Carolina. We said, all right, let's take a look. So we flew out here and drove around, and we saw houses that were twice the size for a third the price. And we said, oh, if we got this, we wouldn't have to, we could A, buy a house, B, she wouldn't have to work anymore, and C, we could have more children and eat too. So we said, oh, this is a good formula. We bought a house in Mooresville, North Carolina for a little over $250,000. And then the business took off, thankfully. And so about 4 months ago, we bought a farm about 30 minutes north of that in a county called Catawba. We got a little under 10 acres. I got a cow, 26 chickens, 10 ducks, 5 turkeys, and 20 guinea hen. So they're running around with the kids, the dog, and we're enjoying the farm life nowadays.
Oh, that's fantastic. What sort of recreational pursuits do you have? Anything that you like to do to get your mind off of Juvo leads and business building and lawyers? And
chasing little girls around. We do soccer, we do school. We're very active in our church, but mostly it's just about spending time with the kids. I used to have hobbies and do fun things like that, mountain biking, weightlifting, doing all that fun stuff. Now it's, if I'm not doing something work related, it's spending time with the kids and helping them and get the most out of life.
is there anyone who you'd like to meet from the, either who's alive right now or somebody out of the historical past? Is there someone you could think of who you would really like to meet?
King David. I'll go with him. He's a cool ruler. I like the Old Testament stories. Read that one, and we're watching the David show on TV, and I don't know. I think that's a pretty cool story. So meeting him would be pretty cool.
What mistakes do you think lawyers make in the marketing of their firms?
Focusing on the marketing side and ignoring the intake side. We see so many firms that will get them a ton of leads. Their SEO is getting them a ton of leads, but they're not converting enough leads into cases. And a lot of firms think they have a not enough leads problem, but what they really have is not a good enough intake process. So it's the firms that are able to identify that process, measure what they're doing well, what they're not doing well, and manage that process. So the difference between converting 60% of your wanted leads to 90% of your wanted leads could be millions of dollars each year, even for a small firm. So many lawyers put the cart before the horse and say, I want more leads, I want more leads. If you're converting 60% of them anyway, what's the point? You really need to focus on that part first.
Let's say you came into some real money, $3 or $4 billion. What, if anything, would you do differently in your life?
Probably become a philanthropist to some extent. I'm not going to give it all away. I'd still work. We joke about this all the time. We've had buying offers since our numbers have increased. And both my partner and I, we joke like, one, we need walk away money to never have to work again. And two, my wife's going to make me get a job. I'm best suited to be working. And then I'm going to have to find a job and build another job that I like. I love what I'm doing now. So really, like, it would have to be an ungodly amount of money on the buy side, because I'd then have to create another company getting to do what I'm doing now, which is talking to lawyers, helping them fix their lead process, their intake process, and getting that side figured out. I love what I'm doing, so it would take a real lot of money for me to have to change that around.
Let's say you had a Super Bowl ad. Someone gave you 60 seconds on the Super Bowl, and you could have that opportunity to have a really big audience. What would you want to say to that big audience in a Super Bowl ad?
Is it about my business or like a...
Could be absolutely anything you want. If you want your Super Bowl ad to say, sign up for Juvo leads, I'm totally good with that.
Yeah, I guess there's a lot of lawyers listening. I would have to probably just pitch our business as to why we're better than who else is out there.
Ted, if someone wants to get in touch with you, wants to talk to you about your business or wants to talk to you about Juvo leads, what's the best way to get in touch with Ted DeBettencourt?
Sure. Go to Juvo, Juvo leads, LEADS.com. Pop on the website, start a chat with our human power chat agents, tell them how we can help you, and we'll follow up and set up a meeting and show you how our service can work for you.
Can they say that they heard you on Love Thy Lawyer?
They absolutely can. And we'd even give them a discount if they came to us and referenced that.
Ed, is there anything that you want to talk about that we haven't discussed? Anything at all that you'd like to touch on? Anything that you'd want to bring up? Anything at all?
If you're trying to figure out your law firm, first look at your leads. Those are important. But then not enough firms double down in their intake. Understand what's working and what's not in your intake. Listen to your phone calls. The good ones, the bad ones. You're going to find some things in there you don't like. But unless you measure your intake, you can't manage it. Unless you measure your SEO, you can't manage it. Unless you measure your lead performance from chat, from phones, from forums, you can't manage it. So the first step is understanding your numbers. We always work best with firms that know their numbers. So when we get in there and we give them a 30-day free trial and we say, hey, I'm going to get you 50% more. If you don't know your numbers, 50% more of an unknown factor is still an unknown factor. So we really like to work with firms that know their numbers so we can show value. But it always starts with firms understanding their own numbers. So if you're a firm listening, make sure you understand your numbers, measure. If you can't measure it, you can't manage it. So yeah, start with that.
Ted DeBettencourt, thank you so much for joining me today on the Love Thy Lawyer podcast. It's been a pleasure to talk to you.
Likewise, Lewis. It's a pleasure to have be an honor to be on the show and a pleasure to have you as a client.
That's it for today's episode of Love Thy Lawyer. If you enjoyed listening, please share it with a friend and follow the podcast. If you have comments or suggestions, send me an email. Take a look at our website at lovethylawyer.com, where you can find all of our episodes, transcripts, photographs, and information. Thanks to my guests, and to Joel Katz for music, Brian Matheson for technical support, Paul Roberts for social media, and Tracy Harvey. I'm Louis Goodman.
What's it called? I can't even think of it now. Sorry, I couldn't think of the word.